Guys, I need you to pay attention right now because this is one of those moments where the market looks calm on the surface, but underneath something is shifting. Secret XRP partnership leaked, banks preparing for something massive. I'm telling you what, this is not the kind of headline you just scroll past. This is the kind of headline that makes you sit back, take a sip of coffee, and say, hold on, what is really happening here? Because when you start seeing quiet integrations, back end testing, institutional language changing from crypto experiment to digital asset infrastructure, you cannot make this up. That is not noise. That is positioning. And when banks start positioning, they don't do it for hype. They do it because they see efficiency, cost savings, settlement speed, regulatory windows opening. And right now, we are seeing breadcrumbs. We are seeing documents, job postings, infrastructure partnerships, and subtle confirmations that XRP rails are not being ignored. They are being evaluated, and that matters. I really do believe the biggest moves in this market never start with a press conference. They start with quiet alignment. Think about it. Banks do not prepare for nothing. They prepare for transition, they prepare for regulatory clarity, they prepare for liquidity shifts. And if XRP is being positioned as a bridge asset in that transition, then what we're looking at is not just another altcoin rumor. We're looking at infrastructure strategy. So the real question is not, is this leak real? The real question is, why would banks even be exploring XRP at this stage of the cycle? Because when traditional finance starts preparing quietly, retail usually finds out late. That's why I keep saying you need to stay alert. You need to stay informed. Alerta Roja USA. Because if this is what it looks like, we are watching the early chapters of something much bigger than price speculation. Now let's break this down logically because I don't want you running off emotion. When we talk about a secret XRP partnership being leaked, we're really talking about signals. Signals of integration, signals of back-end collaboration, signals of compliance testing. Banks do not just wake up and flip a switch to blockchain rails overnight. There are layers: legal review, liquidity modeling, cross-border pilot programs, sandbox environments. I'm telling you what, if there are indicators that banks are preparing something massive, it means conversations have already happened behind closed doors months ago. Institutions move slow publicly, but they plan early privately. And here's where XRP becomes interesting. Unlike thousands of other tokens, XRP was designed with cross-border liquidity in mind. Fast settlement, low transaction cost, scalability. You cannot ignore that design when discussing bank adoption. And let's be real, the global financial system is under pressure. Settlement times are outdated, liquidity is fragmented, compliance costs are rising. If banks see an opportunity to streamline cross-border movement while maintaining regulatory oversight, they will explore it quietly at first, strategically. And that's what makes this leak powerful, because leaks don't happen in a vacuum. They usually surface when internal preparations are already advanced. I really do believe we are at a stage where institutions are no longer asking, should we look at blockchain? They are asking, which rails align with compliance and liquidity? That is a very different question. And if XRP is in that conversation, the market impact could be significant. But again, this is where discipline matters. You don't just assume adoption equals immediate price explosion. You watch the structure, you watch liquidity trends, you watch regulatory developments, and you position intelligently. That's the difference between speculation and strategy. If you want to stay ahead of that curve, you already know the mindset. Alerta Roja USA. Let's talk about what massive could realistically mean, because words like that get thrown around and people start imagining overnight price rockets. Massive in institutional language usually means infrastructure rollout, corridor expansion, settlement pilots moving into production environments. Think about tokenization of assets. Think about real-time gross settlement upgrades. Think about interoperability between traditional banking systems and digital ledgers. If banks are preparing for something massive involving XRP, it likely ties into broader financial modernization, not a marketing stunt. And here's where things get interesting. If regulatory clarity improves in key jurisdictions, banks suddenly have less legal friction to engage with digital asset rails. That changes everything. Capital allocators who were cautious become experimental. Payment providers who were hesitant become collaborative. I'm telling you what, markets move when friction decreases, and XRP has already survived one of the most public regulatory battles in crypto history. Survival under pressure builds credibility. Institutions respect resilience. If a digital asset can withstand scrutiny and remain liquid globally, that lowers perceived risk. And when perceived risk drops, participation increases. That's how cycles transition, slowly at first, then suddenly. I really do believe that if banks are preparing for something tied to XRP infrastructure, it won't show up in price immediately. It will show up in partnerships, in pilot programs, in liquidity channels expanding. And then one day, price reacts violently because the groundwork was laid quietly. That's how revaluations happen, not from hype, from integration. So instead of asking when moon, ask where is the infrastructure being built? That's the smarter question. And if you're thinking long term, aligning yourself with infrastructure narratives instead of short term noise is key. Stay sharp. Stay analytical. Alerta Roja USA. So let's bring this all together. A secret XRP partnership leak suggesting banks are preparing for something massive is not about gossip. It's about positioning. It's about reading between the lines of institutional behavior. Banks don't prepare for headlines, they prepare for transitions. And we are in a period of financial transition globally. Digital assets are no longer a fringe topic. They are being discussed in policy rooms, boardrooms, and regulatory frameworks. Um, if XRP is part of back-end conversations around cross-border liquidity or settlement optimization, that's a structural narrative. And structural narratives drive sustained moves, not temporary spikes. I'm telling you what, if institutional preparation accelerates and regulatory clarity continues improving, XRP's role in the digital asset ecosystem could shift from speculative token to operational rail. That perception shift alone changes valuation models. But here's the key tool. You cannot wait for the official press conference to start thinking strategically. By the time every major outlet confirms massive bank integration, the repricing may already be underway. That's how markets work. Early signals reward the prepared. Late confirmation rewards the patient, but often at higher entry points. So what do? You assess your risk tolerance, you monitor real adoption signals, you avoid emotional overreaction, and you stay plugged into information that filters hype from substance. I really do believe that if banks are quietly preparing through XRP rails, we are looking at groundwork for a future cycle, not just a short-term pump. And if you want to navigate that intelligently with clarity instead of chaos, then align yourself with long-term thinking, disciplined strategy, and constant awareness. Because when infrastructure shifts, wealth shifts with it. Stay informed, stay positioned, and stay connected to the bigger picture. You already know what time it is. Alerta Roja USA.